Hey, good morning. Welcome to church, or welcome to Starbucks, as we are this morning in our favorite Starbucks this morning. Um, might get disturbed, might not get disturbed. We wait and see, but something that's a little bit of a different location, bit of a different kind of background, different kind of feel this morning, more of a coffee shop feel. I hope you're well. I hope you're good. Thank you so much for uh, getting into this podcast this morning. If you're a regular watcher or listener, then thank you so much for all your support and your faithfulness. If you are new to this morning, it might be your first time tuning into this podcast, then a massive welcome to you. All I'm trying to do this morning in every podcast is simply to try and help somebody. That really is all I'm trying to do, not try and build anything big or try and get more followers or try and be clever, etc., etc. Just really to help somebody who might be struggling in a situation or struggling with a problem or just trying to make sense of this mad, crazy world that we live in. Okay, and that maybe you're involved in at the moment. There's something you're going through, something you're dealing with, something you're battling with, something that you're struggling with, something that you're confused about, and maybe this morning and in the future, in all these podcasts, my only aim is to try and say something maybe that I've learned or maybe that I can help you with from a Bible perspective, from a God perspective, from personal perspective, just to try and help you this morning. So I hope that all kind of makes sense in the background. Welcome to church, or should I say this morning, welcome to school. Okay, because on the 1st of February 26, I wanted learning from last week. I was thinking a lot about last week when we talked about looking back, and we talked about if I knew then what I knew now, then what would I do that would be different? And so I'm kind of that's been on my mind all this week, and so I came up with this idea this morning that you know on the 1st of February, welcome to school, because I want to talk this morning and the next couple of weeks um, about the class of 26. Welcome to the class of 26. 2026, not 1926. I don't think anybody watching was probably born in 1926, but you never know, do you? Um, the class of 26. So this morning we're going back to school. This is, and learning some stuff that maybe from what we've been through, what I've experienced, it was all the class. So I'm up for this, and this idea is the class of 26, the lessons of 26, the lessons of 2026. What can I learn in 2026 that will help me, that will take me further, that will lift me up and not bring me down. That will just make me a little bit bigger and stronger, etc. All that kind of stuff that might help us. Um, the start of a new term. Okay, I'm sorry if you work in a school. My wife works in a school, and the last thing she wants to hear on a Sunday morning is talking about school. But this is a different kind of school. This is life school. So you remember last week we talked about Paul, and Paul talked about looking back, and that really got my mind thinking and my brain kind of turning as to looking back. What have I learned from looking back? Because Paul said, when I look back, he said, I'm really pleased with what we've accomplished and done and been through. But what I'm concerned about this morning, and my heart is, when I look back, what have I learned? Now, if I ask you this morning, can you remember when you were in school, what what did I learn in school? Was there a lesson in school that you really loved? Something that you really enjoyed? Maybe because the teacher was pretty nice. Okay, that's sometimes how we gauge what we learned in school. But what can you think about? What did you learn in school? One of the crazy things that keeps coming back to me that I learned in school, and bearing in mind at the time I was about 12, 13 years old, I still remember this. We learned Latin. Now, this is so many years ago. Even then, we were taught that Latin is a dead language. Nobody uses Latin, apart from maybe doctors when writing some kind of prescriptions or something. But I remember Latin. We learned Latin, and the stuff that kind of just still stays with me, still sticks with me. It goes through my mind every now and then. Amor massamat, amatis amaris amant. Like, where does that come from? From all those decades ago, I can still remember that, and it's pointless. I never use it. It's all the verbs of to love, and I'll never use it. I'll never learn from it. I'll never get anything from it. But it's a lesson that I learned that has stuck with me, and I want to try and talk this morning and the next couple of weeks about lessons that we've learned, perhaps perhaps the hard way, perhaps the difficult way, perhaps in a way that we didn't want to learn, that maybe we can still learn from, and we can still remember. Like, I can still remember those phrases in Latin, amor massamat, or mones monet, and all those kind of things that keep coming back to me, that I learned, that won't do me any good. But I'm talking this morning about stuff that will do us good, stuff that will benefit us, stuff that will help us in the future. So that's where I'm coming from this morning. What have I learned looking back? As Paul said last week, as we mentioned, what have I learned? And what I want to say this morning, just to kick this thing off, for the class of 26, is that to make sure that we never stop learning. Okay, because we never come to a point in life, I don't think we ever come to a point in life where we ever stop learning. We always need to be teachable. We always need to be learning. We always need to learn from the lessons and learn from stuff that we've been through, learn from situations maybe that at the time were difficult, and at the time were tough, and at the time we didn't particularly think to do us any good, but to always make sure that we never stop learning. Okay, is that a first challenge for us this morning? What did that, put it in inverted commas, what did that, whatever that was, what did that mistake, what did that failure, what did that battle, what did that hard season, and I know that some of you this morning you've been through a hard season, what did that tough experience teach me? Not what was it like, because I can imagine this morning it was difficult, it was tough, it was hard, it took stuff out of us. But what did it add to you? What did you learn from it? What lesson did I gain? The class of 26. What lesson did I gain? How did that, whatever that is in your life, whatever that means, how did that grow me? Because I'm going to make this point, this statement this morning is, if I don't learn from looking back, if I don't learn from what happened, if I don't learn from that, it was a waste. And that's really where I'm starting from this morning, coming from this morning. My baseline this morning, my first introduction to all of this is, if I don't learn from looking back, if I don't learn from that, if I don't learn from that mistake, for instance, if I don't learn from that failure, if I don't learn from that difficult time, if I don't learn from that time that was worrying and stressful and almost had me knocked out, then it was a waste. And time is too precious to waste. I have learned that over the last 2 years. The time is precious. And when you face a situation like we faced, with the health issues and health problems, and not knowing what the outcome is going to be, that time is precious, and I don't want to waste time in my life. I don't know about you. I haven't got time to waste. I've only got time to learn, and if that can be our um, anthem, if you like, that if I don't learn from looking back, if I don't learn from that, then it was a waste, and I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to waste energy on stuff that happened without learning from it. So let's make the decision this morning. 5 decisions. Let's make the decision this morning. 5 decisions we need to make, and then I'm going to read a Bible verse after I'll mention all of this, and then we'll finish for this morning and come back on to next week with the class of 26, for the second class of 26. Okay? So make the decision this morning based on, if I don't learn from looking back, if I don't learn from that, if I don't learn from how that went, it was a waste. I'm not going to waste anything. Okay? Number 1, make the decision that will not be wasted. That experience, that mistake, that failure, that time of stress, that time of attack, that time when I was down on the ground and almost out, that time that I didn't think I'd ever get through, that, right? That's my decision. That will not be wasted. I have learned so much over the last 10 years in particular about myself, about other people, about situations, about mistakes that I made and still making, but learning from them. I have learned so much from people, from things that happened, and I am determined this morning. And let this be your determination. Let this be your decision that whatever that is in your life, will not be wasted. Number 2, make the decision this morning that what I went through will not be a waste. It wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't a waste of energy. It wasn't a waste of my life. Your life hasn't been wasted because you went through some tough stuff, some hard stuff, some difficult stuff, some stuff you didn't want to go through. But what I went through will not be a waste. It will be a lesson, okay? Number 3, that negative will become a positive. So all the negative stuff. Now, when you are looking back, all that negative stuff that you went through, all that negative experience, all those negative people, all the negative things people said to you, all the negative things that you experienced, make the decision this morning, make a stand this morning that will become a positive. I will make a strength out of that weakness. I will make something good. I will be determined to make something positive and something good out of what was negative. Okay? Do you understand that this morning? I'm sure you're looking back in your life, 10 years, 20 years, however long it might be, that there was some negative stuff. There was some stuff that you can carry through with you right now. Things that people said to you, things that people did to you, experiences that you had that could have brought you really down and could have finished you off maybe, could have caused you to have a breakdown. That you are determined this morning, sometime after that negative, that minus will become a positive and will become a plus and will actually add to your life and not take it away. Can somebody say, yes, I'm going to do that this morning? Number 4, make the decision based on looking back that low, whatever that low point was in your life, and I'm sure there have been many, there have been in our lives, there have been low points of worry, low points of stress, low points of distress, low points of anxiety, low points when we were really brought low, financially low, physically low, mentally low, emotionally low. In that low, whatever it was, will actually take me higher. But when I think about it, when I look back, it's not going to take me any lower. I'm not going to be dragged down by it. I'm going to be lifted up by it. Okay? So that's a real positive decision to make this morning, that what I went through, that low that I went through, will not trigger bad memories, or will not trigger PTSD, or will not trigger depression. But actually, that low that could have caused a depression, that could have caused a lot of anxiety will actually take me higher. Are you with me this morning? Fantastic. And number 5, before I get to this Bible verse I want to read and finish with this morning. Number 5, that. So whatever that was in your life, that will be my class. Remember, the class of 26. The lessons that we've learned that I can bring into the class of 26, whatever that was. Now, you think of that in your life this morning. Can you think of a time in your life when you were brought low, when you were worried, when you thought it was a waste of time, when it was tough, when it was hard, when it was difficulty, when you were overwhelmed by stuff? Can you think of the times this morning in your life, looking back? Well, let's make the decision. Okay, let's, as a church, as a group of people, as friends this morning, let's, as a class, my fellow classmates, let's make a decision that will be my class, that will be my lesson, that whatever that was, it will be my teacher, that whatever that was, and I quite like the idea of this because I don't go to the gym, but that will be my fitness instructor. So when somebody says, have you got a fitness instructor? Oh, yes. I've got a fitness instructor. I don't go to the gym. I don't exercise, but that is my fitness instructor. Okay. That's how I like to look at what we've been through this morning. That will be my fitness instructor. How? Well, it will make me stronger. It will make me better. It will make me bigger. It will not make me weaker. It will not make me smaller. Although that's what it felt like at the time, it will not make me worse. But it will be my fitness instructor. I will be fitter. I will be better. That's our decision this morning. I will be bigger. I will be stronger. I will be a better, bigger person because of that. Not weaker, not worse, but better and bigger. Okay, can we make that our decision this morning? So I'm going to read this Bible verse, probably just, for 5 or so minutes, just and then finish on that. Think about this Bible verse, and then it's in Philippians, it's 4 verse 11. And it's the Apostle Paul again talking to the Philippian church, sending a letter to the Philippian church. And I love how he begins. Philippians 4:11. If you've been around church, you probably know this Bible verse. Philippians 4:11 says, Paul says, for I have learned. Okay? And there's a whole load of context in that. There's a load of meaning in that. There's a load of feeling in that. There's a load of emotion. It wasn't just a statement. It was emotion. It was feeling. It was from his heart. And he says, for I have learned. Listen to this. In whatever state I am, whatever I have been through, whatever I have experienced, whatever low, whatever high, whatever battle, whatever storm, whatever difficulty, whatever the opposition was, okay, whatever the persecution was, he says, for I have learned in whatever state I am. He just says to be content, to be at peace, to be at peace with myself and to be at peace with what happened to me. Just to be able to rest, to be calm, to be content. What a great place to be. To have that kind of heart and that kind of spirit that is just content and not always angst, and not always stressed, and not always striving for this and striving for that, and worrying about this and regretting this and regretting that, and all that kind of stuff that people do, and getting all upset about that and all angry about that. Come on, you've probably been there, but isn't it much better? Much better than being angry is to be content. Much better than being bitter is to be content. Much better than living in regret is to be content. And Paul says, I have learned. Oh boy, there's some emotion in that statement. In whatever state I am, to be content. Then he goes on to say this, verse 12. And this is the bit we often don't read because we read the first verse. Verse 12 says, everywhere and in all things, he says, I have learned. There it is again. Listen to that. Everywhere and in all things, I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound or do well or succeed, and to lack nothing, and to suffer need. In other words, to be in lack, to need things. In all of those things, listen to what he says. And I can't emphasize this enough. He says, I have learnt. And I believe from what Paul is saying, that was over time, not overnight. So don't beat yourself up this morning. If you think, I went through that and I still haven't learned that lesson. I'm still not content, Dave. I'm still angry. I'm still bitter. I've still got regret. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish that hadn't happened. Or I wish I had done that. And living with that kind of regret and that kind of, or living with anger and living with bitterness, living with unforgiveness. You might say to yourself, Dave, I feel awful this morning because I'm still living with some unforgiveness in my life. Let me help you this morning, okay? Paul says, I have learned. And I believe it's also the tense of I'm still learning. He says, I have learned over time. Just so long as we come to the point where we make the decision, right, from this moment, I'm going to learn this. From this moment, looking back, I'm going to make sure I'll learn from that and not keep hold of this bitterness. But listen, I'm sure that Paul meant over time I have learned. Give yourself time. Make sure that every day you learn from that. And every day that bitterness, and every day that resentment, and every day that anger, every day that kind of that regret becomes less and less. It becomes weaker and weaker. Do you understand what I mean by that? That it doesn't get bigger every day, it doesn't grow every day. Make sure that bitterness and that anger and that regret, it shrinks every day. And that's how we learn. Over time, I think Paul meant I have learned through the tough. You don't learn from when things go great. You don't learn from times when you abound or when you don't need anything and don't lack anything. We don't learn lessons from that. We only learn lessons. We only learn from going through the tough, from going through the difficult, from going through stuff we'd rather not go through. But when you are looking back, aren't all your lessons this morning based on stuff that didn't go well, stuff that went wrong, stuff that hurt, stuff that was painful? Am I right this morning? That was your personal trainer because it was painful, it was difficult, it was hard. But can we make the decision this morning that we will learn through the tough? When Paul says, I have learned, I think there's kind of something in there that says, I have finally learned. At last, the penny has dropped, that I have finally learned after thinking about it, which is what I want us to do this morning. My whole idea of these couple of weeks, these few weeks, in the class of 26, is to come to a point where the penny drops, and when we look back and we think, I get it now, I understand now, I didn't at the time, but I know now that thing made me stronger, that thing that made me better. That has taught me some stuff. And there's this kind of feeling when Paul says, I have learned, eventually I learn. Eventually you will learn. Don't be so unforgiving on yourself this morning that because something is still raw. It might have been years ago, but it's still raw, that hurt, that offense, that abuse especially, that you went through, that you suffered. Some days, sometimes, in the middle of the night, in a situation, it's still raw. So listen, I have learned, eventually, come to the point where you learn from what happened. You learn to be, um, to have a fresh grace about it, and a fresh mercy about it, and a fresh forgiveness about it. And there's also that feeling I get from Paul that at last I've learned. The stuff that happened to us from years ago, especially in my life as a leader and a pastor, the stuff we went through that at the time I thought, what on earth is this? Like, what are we going through? What just happened? And had no idea that all these years ago, I would come to a point and think, some days I sit down and think, I get it. At last, I do get it. I understand why those people came into our lives. I understand why we had to do that. I understand why that happened. But I didn't at the time. But I've learned. I have learned at last. And to finish with this, Paul says, whatever. He says, everywhere. And he says, everything. Go back and read it. Philippians 4, 11 and 12. Go back and read it. There's 3 words in there that whatever, everywhere, and everything. I like Paul's school. I really do like Paul's school. I hope you like the class of 26. I like Paul's school because there's no bitterness. Paul doesn't say, I've learned to become more bitter. That's not a very good lesson to learn. Or I have learned to hold on to bitterness. Or I have learned to hold on to forgiveness. No, I've learned to hold on to regret. No, there's no bitterness. Paul says, whatever, everywhere, and everything I've learned. There's no waste of time. Paul doesn't talk about that was a waste of time, a waste of my energy, a waste of my space, a waste of my emotions. No, no, no. He says, whatever, everywhere, and everything I've learned. There's no regrets. Nothing is wasted. I can't emphasize that enough to you this morning. That in the whatever happened to us, whatever we went through, whatever we dealt with, whoever we came up against, whoever said that to us, that everywhere, in every situation, in every storm, in every problem, in every battle, in everything. Do you understand this morning? Paul says whatever, everywhere, and everything. That covers a whole lot of stuff. Doesn't leave much out. And I think he says, I have learned. And my challenge this morning to us in the class of 26 is to learn these lessons over time, through the tough, finally, eventually, and maybe for some of us, at last, after all these years, I finally learned something from that. And to make sure we learn from our mistakes, learn from our failures, learn from the tough, learn from the lessons, learn from that stuff we went through, okay? That we don't waste whatever it was. So listen, come back next week for your second lesson, your second class in a school of 26, and let's see what else we can help you with next week. Okay? Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for support, and every blessing to you this morning. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.